Hi, everybody. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. I'm just giving everyone a chance to sign on. Please feel free in the meantime if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear from you, where you're from, how you're involved with Engine.
You want us on mute, Emily?
But for the presentation, if you wouldn't mind, yes, we can stay on mute, but please feel free to put your camera on. We want to definitely see faces and have this feel like a virtual
get together.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Letting in some more folks. I think we'll get started in about 1 minute here.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lilia from Ivano-Frankivsk. I know Nataliia Goshylyk personally. Hello,
Hi,
Nataliia.
Lina. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Good to see everyone. I see many familiar faces. Thank
My
you.
warmest
That's great.
greetings.
Oh,
My warmest
hello.
greetings
Hello,
to
Professor
you,
Goslyk. Good to
Natalia.
see you.
Nice to meet you. Hello.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for shouting out directly. It's so cool to know that you know our speaker outside of this presentation. So I will go ahead and get us started here. So this is just one of our many presentations that we do here at Engine to try to share with our volunteer community as well as our student community, external speakers who have experience teaching English and also just some interesting topics about Ukraine and directly from Ukrainians. So thank you for joining us today for this presentation with Dr. Nataliia Goshylyk. Just a few items of note before we get started. We would love for everyone to stay on camera so long as you're comfortable doing so to provide a sense of community and a live feel into our Zoom room today. However, we ask that you please remain muted throughout the presentation and the Q&A. So this is so that everybody can hear properly and also so that we can get to as many questions as possible. If you're not able to attend the full presentation, it's not that long, but don't worry, we will make the full recording available afterwards in our next volunteer newsletter, which will go out at the end of the month. You can also email me directly if you would like that recording sooner. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. In 2021, Dr. Goshylyk traveled to California from Ukraine as a Fulbright visiting professor. Since the war, she has relocated more permanently as a visiting scholar and lectures in the Slavic Languages and Literatures Department at UC Berkeley. Today, she's going to share with us her personal journey and observations from teaching English in Ukraine for 20 years to instructing Ukrainian to students in the United States. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Goshylyk, and I will send it over to you now.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much for inviting and having me here. And I'm happy to see so many, familiar faces, but I'm also excited to meet new people. And the Engine is a great space to meet everyone, those who are engaged in language learning and teaching. So, but again, in terms of, appreciation, I was just telling before you all were invited, I was telling Emily that I appreciate this space and time for me to reflect upon my teaching, because frankly, we don't have so much, opportunities, so many opportunities, so much time to reflect upon that. So let me share a few of my observations. So that's not an academic presentation, of course, just my reflections upon the language teaching journey. So first of all, I started teaching foreign languages in 2002. So that was more than 20 years ago. And I was an English instructor at a private school in Ukraine, in Lutsk. And I was, a student at the time of the Volyn University. So since day one, I worked with Oxford, Cambridge textbooks, and for teaching English, we had abundant resources provided. Though, of course, those resources can't be compared with the resources we have available nowadays. So, but I'll speak to the resources later. So in Ukraine, before 2021, I was, the associate professor of the English philology department at the Stefanik Prikopetyan University. And I was teaching courses like intercultural communication, ecolinguistics, and of course, English, which is definitely very broadly defined. That's not only English for communicative purposes, but that is, of course, but also the stylistics of the English language and so on. So in 2021, I got the Fulbright Research Scholarship Award, and I came to UC Berkeley to do my research on the say ecological and identity on social media. I approach my focus is social linguistics, ecolinguistics, and applied linguistics. Right now, I'm staying in US as a relocated scholar. I didn't come back after the war started to Ukraine. I'm here with my family and the young daughters. And I was lucky to get this very competitive position of the lecturer in Ukrainian at one of the best top universities of the world, UC Berkeley. And I'm also lucky to be helping students, not only from UC Berkeley, but from other UCs. Things I'm teaching right now are the Ukrainian language courses. So I'm teaching introductory and intermediate level of Ukrainian. And I also teach the advanced readings in Ukrainian, which is a course more focused on literature and culture of Ukraine. I also teach an English course about Ukraine an English summer course about Ukraine, and it focuses on identity, society, and environment of Ukraine. So you see quite a range of courses. So today, what I'm going to focus on, three major components of successful language teaching. And this is very, very broadly defined, those components. I will show you, I don't have a, I will share one image with you, and you will, bear that in mind while I'll be speaking. So this is the image. So I'm going to talk about the language, students, and teacher, very, very broadly defined. So what is and you see here, we have some intersections. Sometimes those, components do not intersect, and that is important also to bear in mind. So what is language nowadays? We'll start with the language, then we'll go to students, and we'll leave teacher to the end, because that will be my, I think, primary focus, because we know that's a group of people who generally teach. But also learn languages, as I do. So what is language? Let's start with the language nowadays. So what is language nowadays? So when I'm thinking about language, I define that, and I use the definition of the contemporary discourse. And contemporary discourse in language learning, it refers to evolving the ways in which language is taught, used, and analyzed with the modern social, technological, and digital and cultural context. So it encompasses multimodal communication, digital literacy, and the impact of globalization. And also, we have to acknowledge the role of social media, multilingualism, intercultural interactions in shaping language use. For my English teaching, especially throughout the years before 2021, especially those recent years, which were influenced by the pandemic so much, of course. But one of the recent foci was media literacy and critical thinking. So my colleagues from, especially from the Prekarpathian University, but also from other colleagues from Ukraine and we collaborated on numerous projects, and we have published a few textbooks on media literacy. Of course, that was a very timely focus. So of course, English teaching, that was something I was using alongside the textbooks that we were using at the university. For my Ukrainian teaching, as you can imagine, the situation is a bit say different. First of all, we can't compare the resources available for English teaching and Ukrainian teaching. Definitely we can compare, but the comparison is not in favor of Ukrainian teaching. The resources are not so numerous, and there are a few available textbooks which are good, but they need to be supported with some authentic material. So for my Ukrainian teaching, I try to engage as many authentic resources as possible, while at the same time preserving the balance with the textbook, especially at the introductory level. So what do? I use proverbs and tongue twisters, but I also integrate AI in using those proverbs and tongue twisters for introductory level. I use commercials, advertising discourse for introductory level, and educational TV series. But for short films and feature films, I used short films and feature films for intermediate level, and I have, elaborated around 10 lesson plans for 10 short films and feature films for teaching Ukrainian, and I hope to make those resources available to the general teaching community quite soon. By using those resources, contemporary resources, I believe that I teach students how to use resources on their own, because of course we are not going to sit in one classroom forever. So I'm trying to make this TOT moment for students, teaching of training of trainers. They have to be able to train themselves, and that does not mean, of course, that they are going to be language teachers in some time, but they are going to be working on their language for a while, and everyone acknowledges this, me especially, because I always set the example of myself that I'm working on my language, on my languages, let's put it this way, like every day, forever, and I will continue to do so. And I don't mean necessarily English, but also Ukrainian. Being even the native speaker of Ukrainian, like you have to work on the language skills all the time. So that is, remember the circle of the contemporary language, broadly defined, and I focused on the contemporary discourse. In terms of students, my advice and my experience is very, very basic. So first of all, you have to know your students and their need. You have to talk to them, listen, and hear them. We have to be on the same page, let's say, educational practice wise, because if we do not know our students, our lesson won't go as we plan, and the learning goals of the lesson won't be met as much as we expect them to be, because the students won't respond in the way we expect them to respond. So for instance, who are my students who are learning Ukrainian right now at UC Berkeley? Maybe that's also the question that I'm always getting the question, who are those students? So there are a few groups of students who are learning Ukrainian at UC Berkeley, first of all, those are heritage students, and generally those are students of the second, third generation. So their parents or grandparents came to US. Very often they have lost the language in their family. They were speaking other languages or have, switched to English. And very often they don't know the Ukrainian at all, and they start learning Ukrainian at the introductory level. We also have students who know other Slavic languages, but they want to expand their expertise, and very often they understand that they will do their research on Ukraine. So that is also something that needs to know. I need to acknowledge. So they have they want to learn the language, but they definitely know what exactly they want to learn. And I also have students who don't have any connection to Ukraine, and but they have some connection to Ukrainians, and they come to learn Ukrainian for personal reasons. They have, I don't know, friends, or they have their partners who are Ukrainian, and they want to learn Ukrainian because they want to integrate and to join this community and to talk to their friends, partners, and so on. So for me, understanding my students and understanding their need is a very inclusive practice, which helps me reach my learning goals. And the last part of this of the scheme I showed you before was the teacher, of course. So and that was something I gave much thought before today's meeting, because I was thinking about myself and what type of teacher was I throughout all those 20 plus years of teaching practice. And I can, kind of single out a few levels of expertise, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. So those levels, they reflect not only pedagogical teaching expertise, but also kind of the cognitive flexibility, adaptability, and even the ability to inspire learning beyond the classroom. So I'm going to share 5 levels that I think are relevant in my teaching journey. So the first one was the novice level. So that is the primary level, and that's something that's, let's say, that I was teaching because I knew the language. I didn't think about anything else in the classroom. So at this level, the teacher primarily relies on the linguistic knowledge rather than the pedagogical expertise. And very often this approach was more intuitive, and maybe there is some struggle with explaining, with adapting materials, responding to diverse students' needs, and explaining the most common language structures or communicative patterns. So that's the first one. The second one can be called the apprentice level, and with the motto "I teach effectively if the conditions are favorable." So here, I would say the teacher is able to apply basic pedagogical principles and classroom management strategies, but the teachers follow structured lesson plans and implement established, teaching methods. But the ability to handle unexpected challenges, for instance, mixed ability classrooms, this is something that I have very often for my Ukrainian teaching right now. I have students who, have 0 level of knowledge of the language, and also students who understand about 70% of what they hear. Or for some of my classes, I have So for instance, in my last fall, I had students who were taking Ukrainian in their third semester, and I also had native speakers of Ukrainian, right? So that also is the balance I had to navigate. So this knowledge is still developing how to navigate those levels, and so that was the second level. The third level would be the competent practitioner, and with the motto, let's follow the best practices. So the person is totally aware of all the possible practices and is competent enough to choose the best ones. So teacher integrates evidence-based methodologies, is able to engage in reflective practice, and also the teacher prioritizes student-centered learning, and it's very comfortable to incorporate various pedagogical approaches, like communicative language teaching, task-based learning, clear methodology, you name it. And also, it's possible to adjust this teaching style to accommodate different language learning preferences. And assessment strategies come in handy here, and they become more nuanced. The feedback is constructive, and however, it's also important to have this to maintain the structured environment. The next level would be the expert level, and the motto might be I foster learning even in challenging conditions. And so the teacher would exhibit deep pedagogical content knowledge and seamlessly integrate all strategies like technology, enhanced learning, multimodal instructions. I'm very well in terms of those ones. I also use multimodal approach, and I'm very aware of the importance of multimodal language learning. Something I was telling you before in terms of developing my work on short films. That was the project I was working on with the support of the Berkeley Language Center, which is an incredible resource we have here at UC Berkeley. And so one of those, approaches and modes approaches I was doing was the multimodal mode for using short films in the classroom. And in terms of technology learning, my classes of Ukrainian at UC Berkeley are hybrid right now. That means I have students in person, those students who are on Berkeley campus, and students from other UCs are able to join online. We are working in a synchronous mode, but that also creates challenges, and we may meet and talk about the hybrid mode and different modes and their advantages and disadvantages at a different time, because there are so many things we can talk about here. So that was this fifth level. I'm talking about the expert level. So and they are those teachers can motivate students across diverse contexts, and they are able to create inclusive learning environment and handle complex classroom dynamics, even if the resource limited setting. And the last one would be this master teacher, and the person who would shape learning regardless of any constraints. And this level represents the highest degree of pedagogical mastery, in my opinion. So the person is able to transform all challenges into opportunities. The person innovates and can influence the broader educational ecosystem, curriculum development, teacher training, and policy advocacy. So that is those teachers, they foster metacognitive skills in students and enable autonomous learning and of course their impact extends beyond the classroom. So each level here represents kind of a shift in cognitive and pedagogical depth, and moving from mere linguistic competence, which is of course great but not enough, towards like professional artistry in language teaching. And of course, advancement is not automatic. It requires deliberate practice, reflective engagement, and a commitment to professional growth. But of course, I would say one more thing that is important: teachers have to enjoy teaching. And I can say that I'm still lucky because I still enjoy teaching. I come to a classroom and I'm looking forward to a class. I enjoy teaching, seeing my students, working with them, and with all the with the language we are focusing on. So just to sum up, I want to say that successful language teaching is a dynamic process, and that requires continuous adaptation to the evolving nature of language, to the needs of students, to the professional growth of teachers, and to the environment around us. Language, that's the contemporary discourse that demands that educators remain attuned to digital literacy, multimodal communication, and authentic resources. Students, they are the heart of the learning process, and they require an instructor who not only understands their linguistic needs, but also engages with them on a personal and intellectual level. And teachers, they navigate a progression of expertise from novice to a master, and refine their pedagogical approaches and expand their impact beyond the classroom. So ultimately, effective language education is not about reaching a static level of expertise, but about embracing ongoing, or maybe even never-ending cycle of learning, reflection, and innovation. And the most successful educators, in my opinion, they foster a culture of inquiry, adaptability, and critical engagement for both themselves and their students. And by recognizing this interplay between language, students, and teachers, we can cultivate learning environments that are not only effective, but also transformative. Thank you. That would be all from me, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your extensive experience, both teaching English to Ukrainians and now Ukrainians to English speakers. So I see we have one question in the chat so far, which is, what is the future, or what do you think is the future of language teaching? What will the future look like?
Thanks. Great question. When I hear this question, of course, I think about all the technological advancement we see nowadays. And I think the teachers and students will have to navigate between the AI, right, broadly defined again, and the human beings also, as teachers and students are in the classroom. So we'll have to find ways to integrate AI where if there is a need. But also, in my opinion, the most important thing for everyone, especially for teachers, is to set very distinct learning goal. And if we want to need to integrate any AI tools, for instance. So we have to be like fully aware of this. But I'm sure that for many years to come, we'll still be able to see teachers and students interacting with each other. And also, interacting with other tools if they are fully aware of what the goal is. But of course, if I look back, I started learning English more than I was 10, so more than 30 years ago. So that's not like such a long time. I'm not such an old person if you look at me. But in terms of the language learning approaches and the resources that were developed, that has been an tremendous and immense step forward. So I'm sure you'll believe me, but when I started learning English, I still had textbooks which were Soviet style textbooks. I was born in the Soviet Union. So, and they had some, Lenin reference and so on. And my English teacher, she had to cross out all those reference and to leave the text as, as it is without those Lenin references. And what else she did, she was, writing the text on her own because there were not so many textbooks at those times. And we were just copying. We didn't have even a Xerox machine at that time. We were copying that on our own. So the things have changed tremendously. And I'm sure that 30 years will pass and things will also change. But I believe that the core communication between a teacher and the student will remain the most resourceful and the most effective. But it will be supported by other, technological resources and definitely AI tools.
That's great to hear that, the robots aren't going to take over and
I don't
disrupt.
think so. Unless someone chooses to communicate, only with robots, maybe, possibly. Yeah. But, so far, maybe there are people who do that. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have two questions that are fairly similar, just between your experiences teaching English versus teaching Ukrainian as a foreign language. Does one feel easier to teach or harder, and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. I would say that, well, you kind of immediately want to say, yeah, of course, teaching Ukrainian might be easier because I'm a native speaker of Ukrainian. And I must say it isn't right now. So I would say that teaching English in Ukraine was easier for me because first of all, maybe because I had like lots of resources I was able to choose from, and moreover, I was always able to get the help from other experts in teaching English, and we always had so many wonderful Peace Corps volunteers and Fulbright visitors to the universities, and they were always there to give a help, to give a hand in teaching. And here with teaching Ukrainian, it's more difficult, first of all, because of the resources I have to work on my own, but at the same time that gives more joy, because I can choose what I like and what I think will be very useful for students. And at the same time, that's more challenging, especially due to the ongoing war in Ukraine. And sometimes it's difficult to separate the language, sometimes impossible, the language and the events that are happening. So very difficult to separate those. So that's more difficult.
Thank you. I think I'm going to skip ahead to a question that I know we're all thinking about, and coming up with the 3-year anniversary of the war and the full-scale invasion. I apologize, not the war. The war's been going on for hundreds of years, we could say. What is it like, or do you teach Ukrainian to Russian-speaking Ukrainian immigrants? And if yes, what is that experience like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I do teach Ukrainian to Russian-speaking immigrants. I teach Ukrainian to Russian-speaking Ukrainians, and I have some students who are Americans, but they had Russian-speaking families or like grandparents, so they are some of the family was from Russia, and I must of course admit those are students who are very motivated. They know why they want to reconnect with the Ukrainian language. Some of them even visited Ukraine when they were kids. Some of them didn't have a chance to go to Ukraine. But those students who are very motivated and they generally start learning the Ukrainian language at the elementary level because they don't want to miss some very important things. The challenges they have are generally at the elementary level, so they struggling with phonetics sometimes, but they are able to catch up if they work diligently and consistently throughout the first semester of the Ukrainian. So in the second semester, we don't even pay attention to all the sounds, so they are able to catch up on the sounds. So, but I have those students and they are very diligent in my experience. It's great to have them in a classroom, and they are a great also resource to those students who don't have any knowledge of any, let's say, Slavic languages or any languages at all. So sometimes students know only English. And when we are talking about learning a different language, of course, we are talking about learning the whole new system. First of all, grammar system, right? So it's much easier when students at least know Spanish, some Spanish. Then I don't have to explain so many things. And that happens very often here in California. But some students know other languages, which is, of course, very helpful.
Thank you. This is kind of a more practical question, and I know it's something that affects all Engine volunteers because we want to have fluent conversations with our buddies, but we also want to make sure that they're learning the structure and the grammar of the English language. Do you have any advice on how we can integrate grammar into our more kind of informal type of teaching that we offer without it coming off as, I guess, like a strict lesson plan? Any advice there?
Yeah, of course. So there are two things I need to say here. And first, I'll share one thing I'm doing with my advanced level students. So I was telling you that I'm teaching advanced readings in Ukrainian, which is basically, we are reading some literature, we are watching films, and then we discuss that, right? And I don't go, so that's not a place to practice like grammar patterns or anything else. But like if students make mistakes or there are some patterns, I think that would be, beneficial. So what I do is I just, write down the patterns as we go during the lesson. And afterwards, I'm making a separate slide. I call that, in Ukrainian, that would be mовні зауваги, in English, like language remarks. And I write those remarks on a separate, slide. And afterwards, I ask students just to review the slide. Yeah? So there'll be some new patterns, maybe some mistakes they were making. So that's a way to focus on language if the focus of the class is not language per se. So that's one thing, and I'm doing that as I go. But also, teachers may plan ahead, of course. So when, a teacher is planning to talk about something, a topic, I don't know, weather, whatever. So some of the grammar patterns or communicative patterns, anything can be prepared in advance, right? So, and shared with students just to see how the practice goes. So there are two ways that this can be done, and that does not mean that that teachers need to look for textbooks to pick up those patterns. Just think about the ways you would talk about this, right? And think about the most the most popular patterns that you use every day to talk about something. So for instance, something I'm teaching my students to do at the elementary level is to respond not only in one word to the question, how are you doing? And also to talk about the weather, right? So that I teach them to use the vocabulary and the patterns, and we talk about the weather almost every week, and that is something that is prepared ahead, right? Not the patterns that I review afterwards.
So it sounds like kind of repeating the same questions, but allowing the opportunity for different answers and different structures within those answers of grammatically is a key way
Yeah,
of doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will build on this phrase, repeating the same question. So for me, it's important. Well, when I was younger, I was kind of afraid of being boring. And I always thought that, if you have the same question or if you talk about the same thing, that is kind of boring. And as I, grow more experienced, I don't think that's boring anymore, because we as human beings, we have very similar conversations very often. We talk about the weather, we repeat things, right? And that does not mean that that's boring at all. So I'm not afraid of bringing the same question, of bringing the same, text, or even if I'm bringing a piece of information, a text, a short film, whatever, or a song. So I don't bring that resource for just one assignment. I can come up with different assignments, just to use the maximum from this resource. And I'm not afraid that students will be bored with one thing. I don't have to. I don't feel the necessity to entertain them with different, with new resources, with new songs, new text all the time. I prefer if they are very well familiar and cognizant of one resource, and then we can move on to another. Yeah, talking about food, for instance, we always talk about food, right, with our family. That's very natural. And I'm also trying to, to be as authentic in communication as possible. Food, weather, as I'm saying, introductory level, we can talk about weather all the time. And the weather is changing every day almost, or every week at least. And we can comfortably talk about that just the way we talk about the weather with our family.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I'm also an engine volunteer, so this is great.
Yeah.
I just have, I think, one question more about, your life experience as a teacher. Just one more question about that is, a good teacher, well, one of our attendees, Martha, says a good teacher learns from her students even as they are learning from her. So what would you say that you've learned from your students?
Yeah, of course. I think a good teacher is actually right. Is a person who always learns, and I'm always trying to learn. And I must say that I always put myself in the student's shoe in different, projects, in different courses, and so on. I'm always learning, not necessarily languages. Though I know different languages, and I'm trying to use them as much as possible on different levels, because we know that the definition of knowing the language is a very broad one. So that's so dynamic, and we can, talk about what it means to know the language, right? Do we talk about speaking? Do we talk about listening? Do we talk about writing, and so on? So things I learned from my students is I guess, especially now here with teaching Ukrainian, my students don't want to rush. I'm the person who likes to be very intensive in teaching and then give some time, to reflect. So I also learned that. So give time for reflections, give time to students to process, to build those neural connections. That is very important, right? So and that's why things that you are doing here at Engine, that's very important, because you are able to sustain this those language neural connections throughout years, months, whatever. But that's why I'm so skeptical of all those programs that promise you to learn language in a month, in 2 weeks, in whatever, like in a few days. So that's impossible, because the people need time to process. And I'm sure that programs like Engine and with all you guys, like the way you volunteer and you are like working and then giving time for students to process, that's very important. And that's something I'm trying also to do with my classes. I'm trying to give them some material and then give them time to process and to actively produce and build on this this material.
Thank you. I think we had one more question regarding really kind of the teaching aspect of things, which is how do you set goals for intermediate learners, especially I think in our kind of conversational practice. What are some goalposts that we should be aiming for?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I set goals for every, for every class. And another thing is I'm always sharing those goals with my students. So before the class, I show them the plan and what they are going to do, what we are going to do today. So that's something, been very open about what my plans. And at the end, if I have time, generally it takes 30 seconds, I or 1 minute, I'm able to reflect on what things we did, what learning goals we were able to meet, and what we didn't do, right? What learning goals we were not able to meet because some things took longer. So I know, like that also, so many things depend. For my teaching right now, I have built. I'm very free in building my syllabus, and I have a plan for 1 semester, but I kind of am free to navigate between the weeks. So I'm also sharing the weekly goals with my students, and then the class goals. We meet 3 times a week, and they know my weekly goals, and they know the class goal, everyday goals. So that all depends on the material, but it's important to think about what are you trying to achieve in terms of the language skills. Do you want to focus on learning? Do you want to focus on reading? Do you want to focus on comprehension? Do you want to focus on speaking? Do you want to focus on listening? And even if you don't share those goals with your students, or if you don't feel comfortable right now, because you don't feel comfortable about setting goals, right? Per se. So just try to set those goals for yourself and then reflect upon them. And if the teachers do those reflections for a while, I'm sure they'll be comfortable with setting those goals. But again, we don't have that. That's not again rocket science. We have teaching, we have reading, we have speaking, we have writing, right? We have listening. We should build around those language skills, and we should add the material we are working with. One of the the things that that's very problematic that was problematic in Ukraine for the teachers of for English is unfortunately they are overloaded with the additional materials they have to come up with the lesson plans, huge lesson plans, and they don't have to reflect they don't have time to reflect for themselves, right? What worked and what didn't work, and that, in my opinion, is self reflection is very important for language, for any teacher, for all the teachers.
Introspection is key in
Yeah.
forming goals at
Yeah.
this level. That's good.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah, every time. Yeah, if you are in a classroom, you have to know what you're doing with this text, with this video, with this proverb, with anything you are bringing, or with the conversation about the weather. So if I introduce the conversation, if I ask every day or every week what's the weather today, so I should be fully aware why I'm doing this.
Thank you. I'm going to bother you with one more question and then we'll adjourn. Sorry, I know we're going a little over time, but just this is such a great resource for all of us who are teaching. Final question, what methods can you recommend for increasing vocabulary? So in addition to that grammar piece that we talked about to round out vocabulary.
So yeah, that depends on who wants to increase the vocabulary. Something I'm doing might not work for my students, but generally what things I like, I love to whenever I'm working with a text or anything or watching a film, and if I come across the like new word, right? So I definitely need to highlight, put that aside, add that to the AI tool or a notebook, for instance, that that I'm using. So things are not working out that well for my students, though I am surprised to tell that there are so many young students here in US who still prefer to write down the words in their notebooks, and they don't want to use AI tools. So for instance, I'm using the reverse context, right? I have this app on my phone, and then whenever I come across the word, I just add that to this app. My students not necessarily do that, but if I want to build my vocabulary in one topic, so definitely you would have to work as much with discourse in these topics. And here, when I'm talking about discourse, I'm not talking only about text, of course. I'm talking about text, I'm talking about social media, I'm talking about images, as as many as possible. And if person wants to be able to talk about AI, so definitely go ahead and take a Coursera course on AI. That will definitely boost your vocabulary, because you will hear the same vocabulary from different perspectives. Or if you want to talk about politics, of course, go ahead and read New York Times every day. Read one article or a paragraph of a New York Times article every day if you want to talk about politics more. Or or watch videos. Yeah, definitely students love watching videos nowadays, and we should of course work with that and use that to the advantage. So the worst thing that may happen is that if students watch video and they don't work with the vocabulary, they don't work with the structures or with the content, they have to build on that video, right, on that text, on anything that may that they come across. But yeah, so something I'm I from one of my languages, like I know that very little of that, but that's French. So for instance, the only thing I have time for is reading the social media post of the French president, but that's enough, to keep this language somehow alive, and that's what I'm doing, right? So yeah, there are so many ways, but that depends on the person, first of all.
Thank you. And I know that's kind of at the heart of what we do as engine volunteers, is keeping it human-centric, keeping it, focused on that one person and their needs. It could be that they want to learn vocabulary about a particular topic that relates to work. I know I put that in the chat. That's in my situation, that's the case, but in others it may not be so. So it's really dependent on the student and also the teacher and what we want to focus on. So I just want to thank you again, Dr. Goshylyk. Thank you so much for joining us today and for taking the time. It's so helpful to us. Again, everybody, I will be sending out this recording in our next volunteer newsletter that goes out at the end of the month. If you have any follow-up questions or any requests for resources or anything like that, you can feel free to email me directly. I know my email is on the confirmation page that you would have been sent through Zoom. I'll go ahead and add it here in the chat as well. But thank you again. Thank you all for joining us.
And if anyone has any questions, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. It's Nataliia Goshylyk on LinkedIn, and on you can email me. And yeah, maybe Emily can share my contacts. With the recording. Yeah, so I'll be happy to answer the questions. And yes, stay connected. And thank you again for for all the work you're doing. That's very important for Ukrainian students.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and adjourn. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thank you.